Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our panel. As you know, we have a certain delay. That's why we need to start quickly. We formulated this panel within 2 rounds, so I would like to ask the panelists to limit your interventions in 5 minutes, if you may, per each round. I'm sure we are going to learn a lot from you because we have a strong panel here, 4 strong panelists. Daniel Fraile from Hydrogen Europe, Yasemin Kuytak from KfW IPEX, Beatrix Masik from the Federal Economy and Climate and Energy Ministry, and Mehmet Erdem Yaşar from EBRD. So without further ado, Daniel, I would like to start with you. The policy dimension, what you observe within Europe, because you are one of the most reputable associations within Europe, and I am sure you are looking into what's going on in terms of policy development. And we also see there are different policies being applied or being considered. So from your perspective, what kind of policies so far has been effective in supporting and promoting green hydrogen? And of course, as you are here, we would like to learn a bit about the attitude or the position within Europe in terms of the famous colors of hydrogen. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much for the introduction, and also for the invitation to the organizers. It's my pleasure to be here with you. In terms of what we can learn from Europe's policy on hydrogen, the first thing is to understand which type of hydrogen we are willing to support. Yeah? And I think we've been talking about hydrogen for many years. It has not been until we concrete the definition of renewable hydrogen that we actually could move forward. There's been for many years discussing how exactly we will define green hydrogen. You might be aware that we've been discussing additionality. It has to come from additional renewable energy plants. In Europe, we decided that the maximum carbon footprint of hydrogen needs to be below 3.4 kilograms of CO2 per kilogram of hydrogen. And this has been taking quite a while. And also, we discuss now how to make sure that the hydrogen is produced when the renewables are being produced. This is what we call temporal correlation. Which, by the way, in Europe has been decided that has to be done hourly. So you can only produce your hydrogen from an electrolyzer when the renewable energy you are contracting is producing that renewable energy, yeah? Which is quite challenging, and it obviously increases the costs, and it also implies that you will need to have some sort of storage, yeah, in some cases. But so I think this is the most important element, defining which molecule are you willing to trade, which molecule are you willing to support, because obviously green hydrogen will need some state support, especially at the beginning, and also defining what the sectors, if you're going to impose sectors some obligations on the consumption of this green hydrogen, what they need to comply with. Yeah? So the definition is extremely important. And you can see in the US, they have announced the Inflation Reduction Act. So now everyone's talking about the US is going to grow a huge market for hydrogen, all colors, but they still have not defined how they're going to measure the emissions. And this might look trivial, but if you don't have a methodology on how to measure the emissions, you actually don't know if your project will meet or not the requirements. So I think this is extremely important. And the US is just being delayed for 6 months, and it probably will take longer because they cannot agree on this methodology. Yeah? In Europe, it took us almost 3 years to define this methodology. Yeah? So this needs to be well understood, and it cannot be overlooked. It's not just renewable hydrogen coming from renewables. There are a lot more requirements put in Europe. As I said before, additionality, temporal correlation. And I think this is very important also when you discuss in Turkey, we want to export hydrogen to Europe. We have wind, we have electrolyzer, then we can do renewable hydrogen. It's much more complex than that. So that needs to be well understood. That's one thing. The other important policy in Europe is the carbon market, the ETS. I understood that Turkey doesn't have one yet, but they're going to introduce one next year or the year after, which is great news, because this is the only way to put pressure onto the energy-intensive industry to look into the carbonization solutions, the carbonization options. So introducing a CO2 pricing is important. In Europe, we had the ETS, or we have the ETS, but it's true that sectors which are competing in a global market, like steel sector, or they are also protected from what we call carbon leakage reallocation. So we give them free allowances to these sectors to protect their competitiveness against global players. But now we introduce the carbon border adjustment mechanism, the CBAM, so to also put a price on carbon for imported products. And so the steel industry and others, they will need to eventually run their operations without any support for paying for the carbon price, which is basically the signal to them to say, guys, you need to invest in a decarbonization solution. You cannot continue to burn coke, coal for your operations. And that's what is driving the huge investments and move in the industry to look into use of hydrogen in steel production. So this is also very important, yeah? And I think that the third point is mandates. As I said, renewable hydrogen is going to be expensive, especially at the beginning. Renewable hydrogen depends on renewable energy, and renewable energy, we see how it's struggling. The wind sector is not going to continuously going down forever, so we depending on that trajectory. And therefore, you need, as I said, subsidies, but also it's good to put some obligations on the sectors. And in Europe, we have the Renewables Directive, which has set binding objectives for the use of renewable hydrogen, both in the transport, so fuel suppliers have to provide renewable fuels, including renewable hydrogen, and also in industry. So fertilizer companies, steel companies, methanol producers, or the chemical industry also has an obligation to provide 42% of their hydrogen consumption with renewable hydrogen. And this is what is driving the market. And this, I think, in order to apply some of the learnings into Turkey, I think this is what Turkey should be also doing, looking into. I saw that Turkey has put now this year a hydrogen strategy, which is great. But what are the type of colors you mentioned are the country willing to support? Is it renewable hydrogen? Define renewable hydrogen. Make a clear definition so that the people who go into the market and look into investments understand how they're going to structure the contract so that they can comply with the definition of renewable hydrogen. If Turkey decides to go as an exporting country to Europe, then you need to understand what Europe is requiring, yeah? And this is extremely important. So the obligations is one thing, and then of course, so this is the sticks, as we said, but you also need to give the carrots, yeah, to the industry. So here are the subsidies. In terms of subsidies, you might be hearing a lot about hydrogen bank. So this hydrogen bank, it's coming up. There will be an auction in November. 23rd of November it opens. There are 800 million euros. This is the first auction, and it's to provide support to projects for producing renewable hydrogen for 10 years' time. This is only for production of renewable hydrogen within Europe to European customers. But as you know, Europe said last year after the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, they set a target to produce 10 million tons domestically and to import 10 million tons of renewable hydrogen by 2030. Maybe that by 2030 is a little bit ambitious, right? We all know that. But there is an ambition to import. Now you need to understand that this is not just Europe wants to import hydrogen. There are specific countries in Europe that really need to import hydrogen because they don't have access to cost-effective renewable assets. So this is Germany mostly, and the Netherlands. Also, Poland will have to import because they have quite a heavy hydrogen consuming sector, and they have limited access to renewable. And as part of this ambition, Germany has set up an instrument called H2 Global. H2 Global is an auction. They're providing support for the production of ammonia, and in the future, methanol and liquid fuels like kerosene for aviation, to be produced outside Europe and to be imported into Europe. So this is a mechanism supported by the German government. I think Beatrice maybe can develop on that. And that's interesting, but as of today, the European Union does not have an instrument to import hydrogen, nor import hydrogen-derived products, such as ammonia. We're working on that, but it's going to take us a little while. And so I think For me, the message here is that it's good to look into Europe from a Turkish perspective. It's good to look into Europe as a place where you look into the policies, but maybe as an exporting of hydrogen into Europe is a bit too early. I think it's important to focus on your domestic market, understand which sectors are depending on the use of hydrogen today, and how you can replace that fossil-based hydrogen with renewable-based hydrogen. This is the easiest business case and probably the most interesting for the country itself. So I'll leave it there for the moment and happy to develop further later.
Thank you. Thank you. You underlined the initial enablers, to my understanding, for kick-off, ramp-up, and development of hydrogen within Europe. You underlined the importance of carbon pricing, ETS, and certain mandates going into end-use sectors to decarbonize hard-to-abate, especially sectors. Yasemin Hanım, we all know that finance is the key to realize the potential exciting projects. And what kind of frameworks, regulatory frameworks do we need to enable finance into future green hydrogen projects?
Thank you, Bora Bey. I think it's not too different from what we need in other types of renewable energy, but the difference is this is a new technology, so we need the related regulatory framework for that. I think as a start, we need to, as Daniel said, define what green hydrogen is, what renewables connected to green hydrogen are. So a green hydrogen certification scheme is definitely essential, and this will provide guarantee to the investors and lenders that the green hydrogen produced will meet the sustainability criteria that we are all looking for. From the governmental side, tax breaks, financial incentives for green hydrogen projects will definitely help us better mitigate our risks. A risk-sharing mechanism for green hydrogen projects where there are some governmental guarantees again will definitely help, because I think in the initial baby steps of this new technology, we need some kind of governmental support, just like we had that in wind and solar in Turkey before. This is an essential first step. Then there should also be a market for the green hydrogen certificates so that could be traded. And also green hydrogen infrastructure has to be supported with pipelines, storage facilities, and refueling stations. And also the government has to kind of support the adaptation by the end users. So this could be in public-private partnership schemes, public awareness campaigns, and also maybe mandatory blending requirements for transportation fuels to really facilitate this. Turkey is working on it. As Daniel mentioned, in 2021 they introduced the Green Action Plan, and we are right now waiting for the regulatory framework. Right now, green hydrogen only falls under the energy market law, renewable energy market law, so we need certain legislation dedicated to this, detailing the requirements. And I think once these are established, it will be much easier for us to better understand the market, assess the risks related to it, and base our financing strategy based on that. Thank you.
Thank you. So there's a basis, there's an interest, but a lot to do to enable finance, and Turkey has a potential to do so. Beatrix Hanım, now from the wider European perspective to Germany, as Daniel mentioned, the leader with the interest in hydrogen, green hydrogen, and a lot has been happening. And please inform us about your strategies, especially how you plan to decarbonize hard-to-abate sectors, which are the sectoral focuses, and what are the policy directions?
İyi günler, and a big teşekkürler that I have the opportunity today to speak here. Thank you, Bora Bey, and the organizers. I have prepared a few slides to illustrate my speaking points, because there's a lot to say about the German hydrogen strategy. Now that I only have 5 minutes, it's probably too many slides. So I will try to be brief. So Germany was actually one of the first countries worldwide to publish a national hydrogen strategy in June of 2020. So only 3 years ago, well, a bit more than 3 years ago, but still the hydrogen market ramp up is going so quickly that we already, in July of this year, we've had to update this strategy because we're now entering a second phase of accelerated market ramp up in Germany. On the right-hand side, you can see the 4 fields of action of this update of the German National Hydrogen Strategy that I will go through in this presentation. But before we come to the fields of action, let me first make one general point, which was kind of mentioned already by Bora Bey and by Daniel, the many colors of hydrogen. So for Germany, one color is more beautiful than the others. It's the color that I'm wearing today, it's green. So our strategy really focuses on green hydrogen. So we also see in an interim phase, we do also see a role for blue hydrogen, but really in the long run, we believe only green hydrogen is truly sustainable, and also we believe that by the end of this decade, green hydrogen will actually be cheaper than blue hydrogen. So also from an economical point of view, this is what we're focusing on. So we have a lot of financial subsidies for generation of hydrogen, and there we only support green hydrogen. That was also already mentioned by Daniel, that Germany has a very high projected demand of green hydrogen. So even already today, we have 55 terawatt hours of current demand. This is fossil hydrogen. This will have to be replaced, but also we will have even a very big demand that we will need to fulfill. And it's already clear today that we won't be able to fulfill this with domestic generation, even though we have just doubled our target for domestic generation with the new hydrogen strategy. This is not going to be enough. Considerable share of imports, and this is also where Turkey could play an important role, but I'm probably say more about this in the second round. So let me quickly jump to the sectors. So why does Germany have such a big demand for green hydrogen? Well, this is mostly because Germany is an industrialized country, and we want to remain an industrialized country, but we also want to be climate neutral by 2045. And this means really in industry we will have a huge demand for green hydrogen. Between 290 and 440 terawatt hours in 2045 is the projected demand. Industry for us is really the single most important sector where we want to use green hydrogen. Why is that? That is because green hydrogen, I mean, I'm sure you're all aware, green hydrogen is amazing. It's a great technology, but it will always be more expensive than direct electrification with green electricity. So where you can directly electrify, that's very clear in our strategy. Do it, go for direct electrification. But in industry, I mean, there are lots of processes we can't directly electrify. There's first of all the need to replace fossil raw materials like crude oil-based materials, like in the chemical industry with synthetic green materials based on green hydrogen derivatives, like synthetic crude oil, and of course also process heat, like in the steel industry, green steel, very important for us. We're also we will need green hydrogen. So to reach this end, we actually have a lot of funding programs in Germany. For example, the Carbon Contracts for Difference, which is a very big program to decarbonize industry, which is just starting. 22 billion euros will be allocated to it. And we're also working on standards and standards for green products to really establish separate markets. Second sector that I want to mention here, which I think is often very emphasized, sometimes a bit overemphasized, I feel, in the debate, but nevertheless an important sector, transport. But there we're really focusing on those transport sectors you can't directly electrify or only very difficult. So aviation, shipping, probably also heavy-duty trucks. This is also definitely very, very important for green hydrogen. And there we have, I think Daniel also mentioned it already, there we have like a very strong EU regulation with quotas already in place, which is like a huge, very important incentive to actually creating demand. And we also see that demand, especially for like synthetic fuels for aviation, we really see that the quotas are working. Two other sectors that are also important, electricity. So Germany actually wants to be, we have like roughly 46% renewables in the electricity sector already right now. We want to have 80% by 2030 and basically be more or less climate neutral 5 years later. So this is really like, this is ambitious, and in a climate neutral electricity system, green hydrogen will also play an important role. You see here 80 to 100 terawatt hours by 2045, so this is roughly 1/4 of what we have for industry. And their electricity will play a role for storage, but also for like special peaking power plants, which will supplant our current gas power plants, which play an important role for like extreme peaks, because we have a lot of fluctuating renewables. So we're already working now, we're already starting this conversion process to make these gas power plants hydrogen ready right now. Then heating sector, this is a sector where we don't see like a very strong use of green hydrogen, because heating, you really have better technologies than green hydrogen. Like heat pumps, amazing technology, much cheaper than green hydrogen. We do see, there will be a few use cases, but this will definitely not be the main use case in Germany. Right, so how do we get there? So I've already mentioned that we have a lot of funding programs, but of course what we also need is infrastructure. And there also we are actively working already on establishing a national hydrogen infrastructure. We are planning for 1,800 kilometers by 2027, 2028 in the first stage. We both want to build new infrastructure, new pipelines for hydrogen, but also we want to reconvert existing gas pipelines. And then from the beginning, of course, we're not only thinking nationally, we're thinking European style. We have to do this in energy and climate. And so there are also plans underway for a European hydrogen backbone, and the German structure is built as like an integral part of this European network. And then we're also already now starting to build infrastructure for imports from third countries. So third countries, it's like EU speak means non-EU countries. And there we're both looking for pipelines for our like closer neighbors, but also looking for terminals for the import of green hydrogen derivatives. Final slide. We will also need effective framework conditions. Hydrogen industry is a very young industry. There's a lot of development potential still and a lot of potential for improvement by research, so this is something we're really focusing on. And then also, of course, we need standards, we need certification, we need globally standards that are globally as uniform as possible. So this is something we're also very actively working on and also very interested in cooperating on this with Turkey and other international partners.
Thank you. I think the beauty, I may say, of this plan and this framework is it is both comprehensive and detailed. You defined the key sectors, you defined where to go with green hydrogen and where to electrify, and you have defined a framework including research, innovation, technology angle, and certification. as already mentioned. Thank you. Erdem Bey, we know that EBRD has a strong interest in low carbon, clean hydrogen, and you are already involved in certain projects. Can you inform us about your experiences so far?
Well, maybe I start by saying that it's one of those panels where I learn a lot from other panelists, and this is what we were discussing with Daniel. And listening to Daniel and Beatrix, I think it shows how, far away some countries are vis-à-vis Europe when it comes to green hydrogen. And this is actually one of the points I wanted to raise. I mean, as EBRD, we're of course, as EBRD, we're actively looking into ways to support hydrogen projects in our country's operations. But for those who don't know EBRD, we operate in Eastern Europe, Turkey, Central Asia, and North Africa, where this technology is now at a very early stage. So what our involvement entails at this stage is more on the policy side, where we try to develop frameworks, engage with governments in our country's operations to help them put in place the required set of rules for a long-term sustainable hydrogen market development. From our perspective, when it comes to hydrogen, it's, Daniel and Beatrix have already pointed out, it comes down to renewable resources. I mean, do you have renewable resources at competitive cost? Then the regulatory framework, is it there? Do you provide a roadmap to those who want to invest in green hydrogen? And most importantly is the financing. And financing aspect is, again, we haven't done much. We are looking into a few projects which I'll get to further down in my presentation. But first, what we try to do is try to understand how competitive the renewable resources are and try to pin down areas, certain technologies where countries can achieve that competitive renewable generation. And what we see, especially in our country's operations in the Mediterranean region, including Turkey, is well positioned in terms of delivering that competitiveness. That's why our first hydrogen projects are now emerging in mostly North Africa, Egypt, Morocco, where we operate. Second one, as Beatrix pointed out, is the supply chains and how you transport hydrogen. I mean, if you're looking into exports, that's one point, maybe too ambitious for Turkey, but something that's being discussed a lot in the market. And most important of all is the financing. So what we did when it comes to financing, what we look at is, when it comes to hydrogen, the projects are sizable. So it cannot be just EBRD or any other entity, financial institution doing this by themselves. So it's key to bring in a large lending group, large investor group to diversify the risks. So nobody will go into a hydrogen project by themselves. I think that's one thing that we need to achieve. EBRD is trying to lead the way, but we need more commercial banks looking into financing these projects as well. Another aspect which has already been flagged is subsidized financing. Can we bring in blended financing, concessional financing, grants into the mix of the financing to make it competitive? Because these projects, especially at this stage, for those investors who will be the first movers in this industry, will face significant risks. So for them to address part of these risks, or because they're putting their money at stake, so they will have to have access to more competitive financing to be able to make up for those risks. And another aspect which we came to realize developing these projects in Egypt and Morocco is you need to, as the bank, come in to do the matchmaking. So you actually need to have an active role in bringing these investors with, off-takers, the renewable investors providing the renewable generation to the hydrogen facility. So it's a very multi-stakeholder process, involves a lot of different parties, difficult to structure financing around. You can just do the financing for the renewable asset, which is pretty straightforward as long as you have like a sound offtake, say from a fertilizer. But if you want to do the whole complex, like to finance the whole, hydrogen kind of, including the offtake as well, then you need to develop different financing structures. So one project we've looked into is in Egypt. We're working with Fertiglobe and Scatec for substitution of hydrogen in their existing production facility with renewable hydrogen. It will be a 100 megawatt fertilizer capacity, which will be fed by 260 megawatt of wind and solar capacity. And the total cost is estimated around $390 million, which is quite substantial. So we cannot, as I said, do it by ourselves. But what we tried to do is to facilitate this investment, just to get it off the ground. We provided an equity bridge loan, so the investors can get going with like some early stage development, and then we will follow up with a proper long-term financing when the structure is more or less finalized. Another project that we're again actively involved in is the development of a green hydrogen production hub in Suez Canal Economic Zone in Egypt. So I keep talking about Egypt because that's the only country where we have a bit of activity in hydrogen. So that's again another ambitious hydrogen project we're looking at, where the target is to reach 2.5 gigawatts of electrolyzer capacity by 2026, which is quite soon and ambitious. So just to wrap it up, I'll get to what we do in Turkey in the second round, but it is a learning process for EBRD as well, and most of the banks that are operating in Turkey and the region as well. So it's going to be a difficult kind of financing to structure, difficult to bring in concessional money. There is interest from some EU counterparts to provide these subsidized concessional grants or financings to bring down the cost of financing for the banks, for the investors, sorry. But it will require a lot of work, especially for Turkey, given where we are vis-à-vis Europe.
Thank you. I think the message is we should de-risk the investment, and we have certain tools so far, but I think we all need to work more to find new innovative tools to ramp up production and consumption and the related infrastructures. Thank you. Daniel, now we heard from Germany the focus areas, sectors, applications, priorities. So could you brief us again within a wider European perspective, what kind of projects are emerging in which sectors, where, what kind of applications we already see and we will see in the near future?
Thanks. And I think it's very good because Beatrix put a very good picture of where the discussions in Europe are heading. I think it's absolutely fine to have this list of priorities and best use cases. Yeah? I think steel sector will be the priority because it's the one which allows you to decarbonize the most for every kilogram of hydrogen. And then you go to fertilizer, and then you go sustainable aviation fuels, and then maritime fuels, and you have your ladder or your priority scale. Now we need to understand very well for each sector how much they can afford to pay. And for every sector is very different because they compete for a different product. Some compete within Europe, some compete in a global environment. And so this is very important to have. And also, we need to understand that this is a new market, a new technology, and we need a lot of learning on the technology to reduce the costs, yeah, to gain experience, to reduce the risk associated with investment, because it's putting money into this at the moment comes with a high ticket, yeah, with a high interest rate because it's risky. And although steel should be priority number one, steel cannot afford to pay a very high price of renewable hydrogen. So who is going to bring the cost down of that renewable hydrogen that the steel needs to make it profitable? And that's the key question that we need to also look at, and therefore look at existing uses of hydrogen. Today, refineries. Refineries uses a huge amount of hydrogen, which comes from fossil fuels. Try to decarbonize them. Refineries have deep pockets, as we have seen for the last year, and I think they are able to absorb a higher price increase. So even if this hydrogen is used for the production of conventional fuels or for biofuels, it's very important to direct that hydrogen there, especially at the beginning. Yeah? We see it. We have projects which have reached financial investment decision already in the last couple of years. We have one of 200 megawatts in the port of Rotterdam by Shell. We have one by Galp in Sines of 100 megawatts. We have other projects extending in Europe, right? So these are happening. This is good. Then what we see also, we didn't talk about these policies, but we have policies dedicated to aviation fuels and maritime fuels. Here we have clear targets, and we see also a number of projects working on developing methanol as a fuel for ships. To make methanol, of course, you need hydrogen, but you also need the CO2 molecule. So you need to take the CO2 from somewhere. And in Europe, we have defined that the CO2 can only be from certain sources to be considered sustainable. And it's mostly biogenic CO2. So if you have a source of biogenic CO2, take that, capture that CO2, and mix it with hydrogen. And now what the companies are doing is methanol, first of all. In the future, maybe kerosene as well for planes, yeah, and other applications. Now, the largest consumer of hydrogen today, when it comes to industrial processes, is ammonia production for fertilizer. This is competing in a global environment, and I'm not seeing many projects at a scale for the production of green ammonia in Europe, but we see large investments, one of them in Saudi Arabia. So here, because the fertilizer industry is not able to pay a high price of renewable hydrogen, probably not more than 2 or 3 euros. So you need to go to locations with vast resources of renewables, solar, wind. And Saudi Arabia, Saudi Aramco has signed a contract with Air Products for the uptake of 600 tons of hydrogen per day for renewable ammonia. So we might see projects having not been in Europe, but being outside importing, and therefore the tools like H2 Global for Germany, which is running a tender for import of ammonia, might be necessary, but we'll see. Also, ammonia industry is looking into going to other colors, looking into can we put CCS in our current operations. Obviously, the issue of infrastructure is super important, and Germany is taking the lead here. It has been putting forward a plan, a clear map. There is a clear way of financing that infrastructure, because obviously we need to pay for that, but they are not users of hydrogen. So who's going to pay for it? But then they have found a mechanism first the government puts the money, then the consumers will be, over time, progressively distributing the bill to be paid, to be able to make the investments. That's a model which I think can work, but Germany is very advanced here, together with the Netherlands. Other countries are a little bit more behind that. The moment that infrastructure is there, it's going to change completely the picture. We will have a lot more projects connecting to that pipeline, connecting to storage sites, because we will need large amounts of hydrogen storage as well. And here, I think the other type of project which I think is coming big time will be all those renewable installations which are waiting for the grid connection. You just have heard it. Grid connection is a big problem, and it's going to become a bigger problem. Particularly PV plants, but also wind eventually, will decide to not wait for the grid connection, produce hydrogen, and connect the hydrogen into the natural gas grid at the moment until we have a hydrogen grid. So I do think also as a type of project will be blending. So we hear that Germany's interest is not to provide this hydrogen to the heating sector because it's not the most valuable, and I fully agree with that. It doesn't make too much sense. But if you're allowed to bring renewable energy, not renewable electricity, but energy into the system at a much faster scale, and they have the possibility to inject first for a couple of years into the natural gas grid until the hydrogen grid is ready, it might be also interesting. Yeah? It might be also interesting. So we should not close ourselves to specific types out of best economic solution from a study. So we need to be a little bit more pragmatic, a little bit more open-minded, and allow all potential business cases to emerge. Because as I say, we don't have infrastructure, we don't have a full regulatory framework, it's expensive, and so we need to find all the innovation we can and all the possibilities to make this success. Thanks.
Thank you.
And sorry, my apologies, but I will need to leave in 1 minute. I have to catch a plane, and this was delayed, unfortunately, but I would love to stay here longer, and hopefully we can continue the conversations in the next edition or elsewhere. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel, for your contributions, and have a safe flight. Thank you. Yes, one of the success factors is building up an infrastructure to have a real value chain from production to the very end of the processes, the end-use sectors like transport, industry, and many others. And I believe the sectors mentioned by Daniel also will be the first movers for Turkey, many of the sectors. So there are similarities between Turkey and wider Europe. Yasemin, again, finance. We already learned a lot, but from your perspective, what are the financing tools available in the market, and what would come next?
It's a fairly new concept, and we haven't done any green hydrogen financing in Turkey yet. And as a bank, as KfW IPEX Bank, we have only closed one very large project, the one that was mentioned also by Daniel, the NEOM project in Saudi Arabia. So we kind of started it with a very big financing, but it has its challenges. So I think for the projects in Turkey that are currently being done, those are pilot projects, so those were funded through grants and other means. But for larger projects, like he mentioned, in like green ammonium, green steel, you need very large-scale financings, and that cannot be done just with pure bank financing. You need to also have ECAs involved. You need to also have some grants involved, so it has to be a combination of very different financing instruments. I can give some examples from the challenges of the NEOM project in financing. First of all, those were all new technologies, so the banks had to familiarize themselves with these new technologies, how they work together, because you're talking about green ammonium, you're talking about electrolyzers, so it's a totally different concept to what you have financed before. So even with these EPC agreements, it's a challenge to really understand them and mitigate the risks. Also, you have to agree on key parameters for your financing for a very unknown new concept. That also takes time, but there has to always be a first, so that was important. The good thing about that project was that there was very heavy support from the Saudi government. It was the equity investors were also linked to the Saudi government. There were offtake agreements, so that was very helpful to make the project happen. For our part, we were involved mostly on the ECA part because ThyssenKrupp, a German company, was providing the electrolyzers, which is very huge, 2.2 gigawatts. And Euler Hermes has supported the project. I think there were other ECAs like UKF also involved in the project. So governments, in the form of their ECA guarantees, supporting these types of projects is also a very important mitigant for the banks in working on these projects. So when it comes to next projects, our colleagues are looking at new projects already all around the world. And I think the more projects we do, the more experience we will gain and can benchmark and also, share our lessons learned with each other. In terms of financing, there is one interesting thing that KfW, our mother bank, has developed. It's a platform called PTX. and that was announced in COP27. And this platform will bring together the investors, the governments that are investing in green hydrogen together for different types of financing instruments, and the German government is supporting that platform. So I think we need more platforms like this, like the one he mentioned, H2 Global, that can facilitate also the trade and mitigate the price risks. I think there are still some challenges because these project finances require long-term loans, and right now the offtake agreements are only up to 10 years, so that there is a mismatch already there. But we have to work on how to best put the risk and mitigate the risk to the best party, and hopefully maybe in 5 years when we are talking about green hydrogen, we will talk about more financings that we have gone through, lessons learned, and the best way to finance it, just like we did in wind and solar energy.
Thank you. Yes, there will be lessons learned, and with your efforts, with your endeavors, I think we will see a more bright future with more fixed, established supply side, demand side, and many other elements of the infrastructure to go further for the next decade, I believe, especially. Beatrix Hanım, now moving into Turkey, we already started. You mentioned that you're going to talk about the Germany-Turkey relations, especially within the framework of green hydrogen, whether Turkey can be an exporter to Germany and Europe. Please.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity to elaborate on this very important question. I also have slides for this part. Should I just press, or when do they appear? All right. Otherwise, I'll just start without the slides, and I hope they will come up because I don't have any notes here. Perfect. I think I'll change a bit. Where are we? I'll change a bit the order of slides. So I'd like to start with the Turkish-German energy partnership, which is the reason why I'm here, because I'm like responsible for the Turkish-German energy partnership in our ministry. And it was actually also the reason why I was here just 2 weeks ago with our federal minister and vice chancellor Robert Habeck, because the Turkish-German Energy Forum was taking place at the invitation of our Turkish friends in Ankara. So this is a very important platform and like the framework for our cooperation on energy and also on green hydrogen. That's why I want to start from there. So this partnership has a long-standing tradition. It was founded in 2012, and it's actually one of our oldest energy partnerships. So we currently have around 30 energy partnerships. So we're working with a wide range of partners from all over the world on advancing the energy transition. And in recent years, also one important aspect of our work in the energy partnerships is green hydrogen. So basically, this partnership is the central platform for exchange of knowledge and ideas between policymakers, businesses, science, and civil society of both countries. And it brings together people and ideas to support the transformation of the energy systems in our two countries. And so we have a wide range of topics that we are working on in the Turkish-German energy partnership. Renewables, energy efficiency, for example. But in recent years, green hydrogen has really gained ground as a very important topic. And the formal basis for our cooperation is a joint declaration of intent that was signed at the Energy Forum, Turkish-German Energy Forum last year, which took place in Berlin between our two ministers. So what's in this joint declaration? First of all, it sets down the objectives of the cooperation. So we want to cooperate first to establish a green hydrogen sector in our two countries. Then we want to decarbonize our economies, and in particular the industry sector, because both Turkey and Germany have a strong industry sectors, and there's a lot to gain from from cooperation, knowledge exchange, supply chain issues, for example. And also working towards green hydrogen imports from Turkey to Germany. So what are we doing to reach these objectives? So I've mentioned before, the central aspect of this partnership is really exchange and mutual learning. So we have high-level dialogue, like the Turkish-German Energy Forum, where our ministers came together, both bilaterally and also with CEOs of very important energy companies of both our countries, to have such a high-level dialogue. But we also have a lot of expert dialogue, expert workshops, study trips, joint studies. So this is a very important aspect. But then we don't just want to stay theoretical. Well, I mean, it's not just theory, because actually this exchange and mutual learning, it is really informing also our policies in both countries. And like Germany, in our updated national hydrogen strategy, we have profited a lot from the exchange that we have with partner countries on green hydrogen issues. This has been very important for us, and I believe that also the national hydrogen strategy of Turkey, which was published at the beginning of this year, I'm convinced that this hydrogen strategy has also profited from the intensive exchange that we have had in our partnership. So it's but we don't want to stay with, we don't want just want to have good regulation. Of course, we also want to have projects. I mean, that's what it's all about. So we also want to, work together to support projects, joint projects on green hydrogen in both our countries, and well, hydrogen and derivatives, of course, and yeah, central the Joint Declaration of Intent is actually set up a interministerial green hydrogen task force. So this is like the institution in which we are working, but we are also very much looking towards taking industry, taking business stakeholders, science stakeholders into that cooperation, and we're always interested in your input also, what we can do to bring forward this cooperation. So I will go back a bit. Yeah, again, this slide, you've seen it already. Coming to the topic of hydrogen imports. This is not the only topic we want to cooperate on with Turkey. I don't want to give a wrong impression. We are aware that Turkey, in its national hydrogen strategy, puts a very big emphasis on domestic decarbonization, to use green hydrogen to decarbonize its own industry. And we absolutely, this is, I think, absolutely right. We totally agree with that focus, and this is something we also want to work on with Turkey. So not just exports, but also how do we use it in our two countries to decarbonize the industry. But of course, we would be interested that Turkey produces so much hydrogen that it can also export to Germany. And there are actually studies. We've had one study commissioned in the Energy Partnership by Shura, that Turkey does have potential to not just satisfy its own demand, but also become an exporter. So yeah, here again you can see very huge demand. So we are also working on an import strategy actually, and which will hopefully be published soon, which will further specify how to reach this import target. So now the slide that probably all of you have waited for already, because H2 Global has been mentioned, I think, 4 or 5 times already. I think it's one of our funding programs that rightfully receives the most attention worldwide. I think Daniel has already, I think, given you the basic idea of how H2 Global works. Actually, the idea behind H2 Global is the problem that we are facing currently to solve. Well, I don't think H2 Global can really solve that problem, but I think it can give a very important input, a very important, perhaps, first foundation to solve the problem of offtake. Because that's really what we are hearing when we're talking to producers. Where's the offtake? And then those companies who should be interested in buying green hydrogen, they say, yeah, but it's also new and we don't know what the price is and it's so risky and we don't get the financing. So this is where H2 Global comes into play, because it really what we want to do with H2 Global is we want to provide the first price, real price for green hydrogen. H2 Global is actually, well, it's a foundation, and then we have the HintCo, an intermediary company under the foundation. So they get grants from the German government, from BMW UK. And with these grants, what they are doing is, like they have 2 auctions. So one auction is to buy green hydrogen, green hydrogen derivatives in the first place on the market with 10-year agreements, so that really the producers have the investment security to actually produce with these 10-year agreements. And this is an auction, so whoever, so it's like a fixed amount of money, and whoever bids the highest amount of derivatives for this money gets the prize and fulfills the criteria, of course, that are set. So we have a lot of sustainability criteria which are set. And then in the second stage, when these green hydrogen derivatives are delivered, they will be sold with 1-year agreements to off-takers within Europe at the highest price. And of course, there will be a price difference at the beginning. This will be compensated by the grants from the German government. But we hope that over time, this price difference will become smaller and smaller. So we hope that even like at the end of this 10-year period, there will actually be a gain, which will then reduce the subsidies from the German government. So first auction has already started in 2023. Is already, well, you can't bid for it anymore, but the results will be announced in, we hope, in the first quarter of 2024. So this was 900 million euro. If you've missed that one, don't be sad. There's going to be a second auction in 2024, which is going to be even bigger. 3.5 billion euro. So products, you can see here green hydrogen derivatives in the first phase, ammonia, methanol, and synthetic aviation fuels. So this is, however, not the only funding program that is relevant for imports. So I would also like to briefly present this funding program, which I've also mentioned in the first round. These are our carbon contracts for difference. I have to say that this is not a funding program specifically aimed at imports, because it doesn't actually aim at generation. So what it supports is actually the use of green hydrogen or green hydrogen derivatives in industry. So what this program does is that it covers the price between fossil production processes, the price difference between fossil production processes and greenhouse gas neutral carbon production processes. So currently, like the carbon price in the ETS, it's rising, but it's still not high enough to really, set a strong enough incentive of its own to switch to greenhouse gas neutral production. So this, while the carbon price is rising, we want to provide this incentive with this funding program to bridge this gap. And there also we will go for a market-based auctioning. So whoever offers the most carbon reduction, greenhouse gas reduction at the lowest price, wins the bid. And then the interesting thing about these contracts is also if the carbon price rises and if the carbon price becomes so high that actually the greenhouse gas neutral production is kind of cheaper at some point than the fossil production, then you will have to pay back funding under this carbon contract for different schemes. So this is a very important scheme which we have just launched. 22 billion euro shall be allocated to it, and I think this, where the hydrogen comes from, we don't mind. Well, it can be imported, it can be produced in Germany. Even blue hydrogen can be used at the beginning, but we have you get less funding for blue hydrogen. So I said before, we only fund the generation of green hydrogen. So for the usage, because we really have to kind of establish the procedures, blue hydrogen is also eligible, but you will get less funding for it. So a specific incentive for using green hydrogen. I think these were actually my slides. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. It's quite informative. Thank you. Thank you. Erdem Bey, again, to continue with Turkey.
Okay, as I said, as part of our engagement in all of our countries' operations, when working with Turkish authorities to put their hydrogen strategy into perspective. So now we're actually about to finalize a study which we have been working on together with TENMAC and Ministry of Energy. We hope to issue the final report by the end of the year, which will then be followed by a roundtable discussion where we hope to invite all the stakeholders in the market, because it's something that we all need to discuss and hear out like others' views and perceptions, etc. So what we tried to do in this report was actually what Daniel and Beatrix kind of talked about, like what is the priority for Turkey? So what is there demand for hydrogen? And if there is demand, where is this demand coming from? So where we should be focusing initially, and then if possible, if we are competitive enough, how do we scale it up? How do we expand it to other industries, other sectors, and potentially can we export? I mean, can we get to a point where, once we meet the internal demand, can we get to a point of exporting hydrogen? So we'll provide some, insights around that. We've looked into a couple of pilot projects, which Yasemin Hanım talked about. So there are a few companies already looking into hydrogen, investing in hydrogen in the market, which are rather small and early stage projects, but this all needs to be ramped up pretty quickly. Needless to say, hydrogen is key for Turkey as well. There's a great potential, and it can be, the way at least we see it based on our calculations, and which we'll present in the report, is that hydrogen production in Turkey can be competitive. And it can provide the push on the decarbonization efforts. So, and potentially, even, given that what happened in the wind industry, Turkey even can benefit from manufacturing of electrolyzers and potentially become a hub for electrolyzer manufacturing as well. So, again, the report points to certain sectors being the priority: refineries, ammonia production, and then potentially steel. So that's what our report also identified, which will also again be in detail provided pretty soon. So we continue to, work with also the TSOs as well, trying to understand whether some of the pipelines can be repurposed for hydrogen, which TENMAC is already trying. They've tested that as well. So the engagement at this stage is, as I said, more on the policy aspects. We're now trying to reach out to the investors, the private sector, trying to understand how they see it, how they plan meeting their, hydrogen demand, whether they have appetite to, entertain these investments as off-takers. But I think, it will be a useful discussion, roundtable discussion, hopefully by the end of the year. And we will be announcing it widely, so hope many people can make it. Thank you.
Thank you, Erdem Bey. I think these are all very important questions which is going to be addressed in your report. And I think we all agree that hydrogen may bring, green hydrogen may bring multiple benefits and opportunities, reducing the fossil fuel imports, number one, to enhance diversification in the fuel mix, and to a potential to reduce the energy import bill of Turkey, which is a challenge for all of us here, the current account deficit, current account balance. And the second benefit we heard a lot here today is the decarbonization, support a clean energy transition with all challenges and opportunities. So depending on the volumes, green hydrogen will certainly reduce the CO2 inventory of industries and transport, and some other sectors, as you mentioned. And the third benefit, as you mentioned, is to become a technology producer based on innovation, industry, academia, government partnerships, so on and so forth. So there are many opportunities ahead of us, but we need to learn more, I think. And I hope this panel will be useful for your future projects and endeavors. And one special thanks to TÜREP, the organization, for arranging this wonderful panel. And we all believe that wind industry will be at the center of this potential hydrogen future in Turkey. Thank you.